a bit. Right? In teaching, this kind of thing has come up in a number of contexts. And so in a sense, to your suggestion of illusion, maybe the simplest way of putting what I want to say is I will raise you models. You know, I mean, I think that the concern with illusion brings up the, you know, the old distinction between appearance and reality. And I think one of the things that you see often in the sciences, and I was really introduced to this concept in physics, you know, when one of my professors, much to my dismay, in my epistemically naive way, said, well, physics builds models, beautiful, elegant, useful models. Are those models true of reality? Well, they must be like it, or they wouldn't work so well. But really, if they're true, like, you know, beyond that, it's a philosophical question. And it seems to me that I think, you know, one question we could ask about our illusions, right, as you might say, at least philosophers like me, who have a kind of empiricist bent, is, are they useful? And what are they useful for? And, you know, what are they keeping us from seeing? You know, I mean, just seeing that it's an illusion, or seeing that your illusion is a model, I think gives you a certain freedom and maybe a kind of detachment or non-attachment to it. So you go, okay, this model is not really working, you know. And anyways, I don't want to say any more because there's not a lot of time and other people that might get some discussion going. But I think you raise a really good question for practice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Would anyone else like to comment or question? I certainly would, but I'm deferring to the group now. Okay, the first part. Okay, somebody, Juan, are you unmuted? Do you want to jump in, please?
Okay. Well, I came a little late, but I kind of catch the talk on the illusion concept. And I was just wondering, what role would intentionality play? Do you think that illusions are mostly unintentional? Are they intentional? Or so what's the relation between intentionality, unintentionality, and illusions?
This is a great question, Juan, because if we follow Montaigne's view, so many illusions are not intentional. Now, there was a French philosopher, Jules de Gaultier, at the beginning of the 20th century, that coined the term Bovarism. I prepared a talk about Emma Bovary, or Wingard asked me, and he talked about the angle between what really is and what we think we are or it's going on. And the greater the angle, or the incongruity, or the distance, the greater the illusion. So that part may be individual. Already Plato said that the ridiculous are those, the laughable are those who are not knowledgeable of who they are, you know, but the weak one, if it's the powerful, they are very, very hurting us. So in the Philebus, we believe we are more wealthy, he says, more beautiful, more wise than we actually are. So there might be some of it may be unintentional in order to survive as a human being, you know, one's importance. And the other may be quite personal, you know, how much we need to, like I said at the beginning of my talk, we haven't changed. So you see, so how much we need to believe in things that are not necessarily true, how much a woman needs to believe that 20 years after that, or 30 years, she hasn't changed, you know. So I think it's both, and it's a great philosophical question to try to find out which is intentional, which is not. Augustine believed that all is intentional, that the will is wicked. There is a great difference between those who say that we are ignorant of, or those who say that we want not to know the truth, or not to look, or not to do the good, okay? So there are two strands of philosophy here.
Fascinating, Lydia. Patricia, your hand is up. Do you have a question or comment? And Andre's hand is up also.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Patricia.
Yes, okay.
Careful.
So, well, Lydia, thanks a lot for your talk. It has been great as the one of last year, so stimulating and lots of things. And I would like to comment a lot, but just a little comment. So you started asking what's the role of philosophy in the actual society? As we, as practitioners, are we relevant, or how can we be so relevant? And you arrive at the end of your talk to the concept of illusion. And this is kind of a great bridge that you built between a question on ourselves and on our role, and the concept of illusion, and the relationship between the truth and the false, what is true and what is false, what is apparent. And well, I just want to go back to simply to Kant, because Kant is in the pure reason, in the critic, then Reiner Vernunft, Kant just distinguish the noumena, the reality which is in itself, the object of reality, as something that we cannot reach and know, and the experience that we have of the world. And when we enter in relationship with another human being, we can just accept that our experience is our vision of the world, and his or her experience is her or his vision of the world. And yes, in this way, our vision and his vision or her vision are illusions of the world, but these are the only way to experience the world, and we have to find a sort of compromise in our vision, just looking for a common point or a common vision which can help us to understand a bit more, just recognizing that the truth is something, the absolute truth is something that we can never, it exists as an object of reality, as Kant says, but we cannot experience in our human life. So that's interesting, because this gives the limit of our research as philosophy, but in a way, I could say, it makes us relevant, because we recognize this from the early beginning of our search. So in a way, as you say at the end of your talk, we accept since the beginning that our knowledge is an intentional illusion or an illusion. We can go further, but we search. And that's an interesting point too. And you have touched so many things, the concept of justice, that really, it would deserve a whole day to discuss all the topic and the concept that you touched. But anyway, I find it very stimulating and very, very interesting. Thanks a lot, Lydia.
Thank you, Patricia. I will talk more about justice in the Russian conference, not only in the workshop, in the conference, so we can talk there. But let me just point to two things. First, although in my classroom, because I appreciate Kant very much, there is a moment of silence at the death of metaphysics that I make the students, perform, because I think something has changed. You should know, and I think you know, that Einstein and Karl Popper did not accept the view that we are not talking about reality when we are advancing in knowledge. So Kant has been challenged, not only by those who didn't want metaphysics to die, but his view that we can never know anything about reality. And then he did not talk about the psychological point of view or the more personal, as you said, because he tried to define what we have in common in building reality. I know that you took it a step further. But then if I follow what you say, and we have to accept that everyone lives in another universe, what's the role of philosophy then? Are we not all psychologists? If the role is to go into the world of the other, are we not ill-equipped for that as philosophers? All right. Thank you so much.
Lydia, I want to give the others a chance. We have people who want a question. So I'm going to call on Celista to unmute herself and tell us who you are. I'm not sure I recognize you. And then please ask Lydia your question.
Hi, Lou. It's Carol Gould.
Oh, Carol. Okay.
Yeah,
Carol, I've known you for a long time, but not as Celista. Welcome.
It's Celista. It's Celista. It's an older email I use, and somehow it's become my Zoom handle. Sorry about that. My apologies.
That's okay. Do you play the cello?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, there you go. Please,
I've had for a long.
please go ahead.
Okay. First of all, it's a pleasure to see you, Lou, and a pleasure to see all the others of you whom I've known, some just through correspondence. First of all, Lydia, I appreciate your talk. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it and engaging. My question is this. It has to do with applying what you said to practice. And it has to do with the question of illusion and self-deceit. And of course, that's a major motif in French philosophy. Do you think that, and especially since I know you have a lot of clinical experience, do you think that self-deceit has some adaptive value? I mean, to what extent should one, as a philosophical practitioner or as a professor, say, try to, not that one can, but to what extent should one try to erase that?
Yes, thank you so much, Celeste. It's a wonderful name.
Carol. It's
Carol, okay.
Carol, cool.
Celeste also. Thank you so much for I think this is exactly the question. What do we do? In the academy as teacher, we are protected. We talk generalities, we talk abstract things. In the private practice, we have someone in front of us. Our role is not just to listen. We are not very good at that, or be empathic. We are not being taught that in philosophy. We have another mandate, another challenge, but we cannot use that unless the person explicitly says, I would like to learn, or I would like to change, or I would like to change that. Then you may suggest something about talking in general about self-deception, or Sartre, or whatever, in an indirect way first, an abstract way first, and let the person choose for himself or herself what resonates with him or her. And you may go as far as he or she lets you. Montaigne said something interesting. He said that actually, when you buy food in a grocery store, you take it some home and you guard it and you taste it. But when you read, or when you go into philosophy, you digest it immediately and you're being changed by that. So we have to be very careful. Sometimes the person does not let you. We have to be sensitive to that, and we shouldn't push anything that is not accepted. And we may point to the generality of what I said, to illusion, to self-deception, to the adaptive role that they may have. Freud was great at talking about defense mechanisms, saying that absolutely necessary. But Nietzsche said, how much truth a person can bear is the mark of a great soul. So between this and that, as philosophical practitioners, we can think how to do and when to do, and if to do at well, as at all, in relation to self-deception or illusion. And is illusion the same as self-deception? This is what I wanted to ask. Is it a necessary self-deception or not, or something else, or something maybe to be enjoyed together, as usually self-deception is not?
Okay, thank you. Lydia, I want to invite our two more questions, if you don't mind, and then we take a coffee break. So we'll go over time a little bit, but it's, I know, a fool's errand to ask philosophers to be brief. But anyway, please be brief in your questions and answers. We could go on with this all day for sure. I'm going to call on Luis. Your hand is up, and then Andre. Okay, so Luis, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, I really appreciated the conversation and the talk that you had about illusion. I guess my question is what is the role of emotion in illusions that we have? Like, for example, let's say somebody who has, an LGBTQ sexual orientation, but for reasons of circumstances like their family or other societal kind of factors, are hiding that, maybe the role of shame in our illusions. So that's kind of my question.
But the topic of shame is terribly important. I have written a lot about that. I think that the most important work we should do is to befriend ourselves. And if we know ourselves, is in order to accept ourselves and get rid of shame and bad conscience and anything that goes with that, because it makes other people unhappy if we are unhappy. So if you need an argument for happiness, if you feel uncomfortable to be happy, is that if you're unhappy, you make other people as well. So this is an utilitarian argument for happiness that I have found. I have devised a tool of self-referential humor as a tool that enables you to know more about yourself, to hold contradictions, to work well with shame, with fear, and with anger. It's a powerful tool to work with emotions. And finally, to live with unresolvable conflict, and sometimes to resolve it on a higher level. I would like to share this with you. If you write to me an email, I will send you the information. I cannot take more of this time. But shame is very, very important. This is why, Carol, you cannot shame a client by showing truth naked or his nakedness. You know, it's like a violation of sorts in the practice. So what's the actual way of doing that?
Great, great. And Lydia has written very extensively about this and allied topics. I do suggest that you read some of her writings. They're really, really interesting. Okay, last question. Andre, please unmute yourself. Andre from Brazil, please ask Lydia your question or make your comment.
Just to start, if I wanted to acknowledge is really interesting proposition, because I constantly entertain the question of what exactly is distinctive of philosophical practice. And it's really interesting your proposition that this relationship or the commitment with truth is a distinctive feature of the kind of approach we have in philosophical practice. I've never thought about that. That's a really interesting observation. As to the question, I tend to see an aspect of, or a kind of illusion, I wonder what you think about that, related to the fact that many times we tend to be unrealistic about ourselves, in the sense that we give more weight to our failures, let's say, than to the things we do well. So we kind of put us down in a way many times. So I wonder if you think this is an instance of illusion, and in terms of practice, what are your thoughts in terms of how to handle that, how to deal with that if you see it happen? Yeah.
Let me make sure I understood correctly. We are unrealistic in what? We tend to put more emphasis on what?
On our failures.
Failures.
We are too harsh with ourselves. We're not fair and realistic in the sense of, even when we see a failure, we are also able to acknowledge, if we approach it right, that it's not only failure, right? We also are doing some things well and all that. That's
well, listen, the most important thing is to learn a sense of proportion, but we don't know how to learn it because we don't know we have to be proportionate in relation to what. You see, that's the problem. It's the limit and the unlimited in Plato's view. This is why Jung talk about, you know, the wise man or woman, you know, the guru that shows you, that tells you where you are, at least, you know, that gives you a little bit of sense of proportion. This is not the end. There will be more failure. You can relax. I can do it, you know, with a paradoxical approach to humor, you know, and a lack of sense of proportion, of which we all partake in, makes us look at things not realistically. You're right. You know, there is an illusion that they are big at the moment. With time, they will seem smaller. Try to look at the present with the eyes, the kind eyes of the future. When you will tell that jokes to your grandchildren, you know, try to implement it already now, this self-distancing, this putting things in proportion, this putting yourself in proportion. So you failed. So is the failure the thing that should be minimized, or maybe the importance of your failing, of yourself, you see? So this is also a question for us.
Thank you so much, Lydia. We're going to wrap this opening session up. You've set a wonderful tone for the day, brilliant as always. I just want to add, I can't resist. You've said too many things that we can't address them all, but you also mentioned that so much is taboo now on the campuses of American universities. In particular, it gives philosophers a lot of work. In principle, there is nothing that philosophy should not be able to address. And our students will be pleased and benefited and shocked if we can address these push-button issues in an engaging and inquiring way without trying to sell them an agenda. Andre's question makes me think of a broader issue, though, and this you may have an answer to later, okay, for another paper. Bad news sells, Lydia. Good news doesn't sell. Every network is trying to out-catastrophize every other network in order to attract viewers. So that's Andre's question taken to the social level. People dwell on bad stuff, not on good stuff. Bad news sells, good news doesn't. Can we change this? Can we fix this? And finally, you made me think of Descartes and how incomplete he is with his cogito. Because as you've highlighted in so many ways, it's also the case that others think of us and therefore we exist. And maybe we exist more strongly because others think of us. Yes? So anyway, thank you so much, Lydia, and wonderful, wonderful presentation. We're going to take a coffee break or whatever you're drinking or imbibing. We'll be back, but we resume on schedule in 7 minutes with Alexander Gooch from the UK. Okay, so please take a break and then we'll continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.